And are you refreshed? Good. Now what? It's supposed to be getting smaller and smaller and smaller in terms. Doesn't work that way, does it?
Hello. It's nice to be here. I'm not used to being in front of people at all, so give me a minute. But I have a question. When you talk about the vortex, you talk about it being inside you.
We talk about it being a vibrational reality that is yet to manifest, but it is inner. It is inner, but in many cases it is somewhat apart from you because you put the pieces of it together, but you often are not a match to the pieces that you've put together.
But it's on the inside. It's an inside job. You have to go inside first before you get that outside. Is it separate, really?
Well, we don't want it to be. The reason that we choose the analogies that we do are always in an attempt to bring you from your current understanding into one that will serve you better. So in the beginning, when we visit with our physical friends, they were, for the most part, way back then, accustomed to seeing themselves as this singular personality that is here in this physical body. So we began our assimilation process by explaining that you are more than this physical body, that there is another part of you that existed before you came into this physical body who still exists, and that part of you is really dominant. We refer to that as your inner being. And the reason that we are pointing apart from you is to represent it was pre-you. It existed before you came into this body. And then we go on to explain that while that part of you was before you came into this body, that part of you still is the dominant part of you. Humans refer to that as your soul. We like to call it your inner being. In other words, it's that bigger part of you. And then we explain that here you are sifting and sorting through your physical life, launching rockets of desire, and each time you ask for something, that non-physical part of you, that inner being part of you, becomes more expanded. So you are expanding continually while you in your personality may not be keeping up to speed with that expansion.
Okay, but when you're meditating,
and until we are able to help you to realize that that relationship between you and you exists, then you don't know what to do when you have separated yourself. You see what we're getting at? In other words, it was sort of the beginning of helping you to understand.
But when you're meditating, you are in that state and it's inside. It's inside you.
When you meditate, you stop the resistance of this personality. You're right. And when you are no longer offering that resistance, then there is that blending. That is what that meditation is. But you see, you're always you, whether you know that you are or not. The reason that we're explaining it in the way that we are is because you often need to do something differently than you're doing so that you can be in the receptive mode and receive who you really are. These are just bridges that we are building here.
Okay. Now, maybe this will help. The person had mentioned, what does Esther do to get Abraham flowing through her initially?
She just doesn't do anything to keep it from happening is basically the answer, because we'll flow unless she's doing something that doesn't let it flow.
Is there any location on your body that you let go of, or?
Well, in the beginning, when Esther first met us in this way, she was focusing on her breathing.
Okay.
And as she focused on her breathing, the key, especially in the beginning of consciously connecting with that broader part of you, is to find something to think about so you stay focused, but that doesn't take you into contradictive energy. And so focusing on something really general like your breathing is a really good way to do that. And so in the first sitting, Esther made contact with us. She didn't recognize it. She didn't know that's what had happened. To her, it just felt like something wonderful was breathing her. But she had no conscious awareness of it, and she couldn't hear our words. It was just a visceral experience of connecting with that energy of well-being, and she allowed us to breathe.
So there's no separation?
Not in that moment, there was not, no.
But there never is, but we make it.
That's well
with a
stated.
contrast.
That's well stated. There never is a separation between you and your inner being. But sometimes you hold thoughts. That's why we began today by saying your thoughts matter a lot. Sometimes you hold thoughts that prevent you from being in the receptive mode so that you don't realize the connection that you have. And everything that we teach is about you discovering or coming to that place of realizing that connection that is always there.
Can you say something about releasing negative thought in your life? Can you give me some help with that, with thought patterns?
The thing about it is that first we would like to say it's a gradual thing, and so don't try to make it happen all at once. Next, we want to say that you can't not think about something, because when you're decided not to think about it, you're thinking about the thing you've decided not to think about. So the key is to think about something else. And you said it to us wisely. Is there some aspect of your body that you could focus upon? And we said Esther focused upon her breathing. So if you pick something that isn't loaded with something negative, the very best example that we have of this, early on in Esther's experience with us, she was allowing people to call on the telephone and have conversations with Abraham. And one day a woman called and couldn't hear anything that we were saying. She was asking very strong questions, but she could not hear our answers because she was all wadded up in the uncomfortable details of her life. So nothing that we said gave her any relief or any belief that things would get better. So we said to her, let's talk about something else. And she said, like what? And we said, let's talk about blue glass. And she said, whatever for? And we said, because you don't have any strong opinions about blue glass, and it can be a clearing experience for you. It just annoyed her that we wanted to talk about something that was not her problem. So we described blue glass. We talked about how many different ways glass is blue. Some of you can see through, some of you can't, different shades of blue, until she couldn't take it anymore. And then we said, let's talk about butterflies. Well, that didn't interest her either. Why in the world would I like to talk about butterflies? We wanted to talk about butterflies with her because it was something that she didn't think about, that she didn't have any negative conversation going on in her own mind, that she didn't have any patterns of thought that were detrimental. Then we said, let's talk about feathers. And so by the time we had finished this brief conversation on these subjects, she was totally annoyed. She hung up, not understanding what we were getting at. And Esther and Jerry went about their day. So they were in San Diego, and they went over to their favorite restaurant in La Jolla to have lunch. And when they got out of the car, Esther said, we've got to go in this shop. And Jerry said, why? And Esther looked at him like, are you kidding? It's a shop. So he followed her in. She went into the shop, deep into the shop, and found a wall, a complete wall of blue glass, unlike anything that she'd ever seen. Now, Esther didn't want any blue glass. She was not interested in blue glass. She didn't even make the association about why she was seeing blue glass. And then they went off and had lunch. They left George's and walked down to the cove, the most beautiful place, in their opinion, where the land meets the sea. And as they're walking across this large grassy area, a flurry of butterflies so intense surrounded them that they had to stop talking in order to not eat them. So they made their way through the butterflies, and Esther is still not making any association with what had been activated in her an hour earlier. And then a little boy came across the way, very little boy, barely walking really, and he looked like he was coming right to them. And Jerry said, he looks like he knows you. And Esther looked at him, and he walked right up to Esther and handed her a feather. And in that moment, Esther realized that within a couple of hours of these three things being activated in the ethers, that because she had no resistance to any of them, they all manifested in her experience. So that's the point of meditation. That's the point of not trying to take a negative thought and turning it into a positive thought. That doesn't work for you. You have to take a non-thought and let the things that you want flow in on the wings of the non-thought. Now, of course, it's wonderful if you can turn a non-thought in time, let's call it an unconditional thought, If you can turn it into a positive thought that gains momentum, then, oh, that's when the real fun begins. In other words, we don't want you meditating your life away. We don't want you in a state of non-thought. We would far rather see you in a state of appreciation than in a state of meditation, because in either case there's no resistance, and in appreciation your object of attention is experiencing your flow, and you are having a better experience in appreciation than you will ever have in meditation, because you are here focused, and all that you are connecting with while you are meditating is now still with you, flowing through you towards your object of attention. Appreciation is way better than meditation. But if meditation gets you to that, then that's a really good path of least resistance, isn't it? Yes.
Thank you.
Best conversation we've had about any of that. Yeah.